Good morning again. My name is Brian Troutman. I'm the new treasurer with Veterans for Peace beginning this year. First, I would like to thank my two most recent predecessors, Mark Foreman and Nate Goldslag. Thank you. Okay. As you can see here, this is the treasurer's report for our business meeting. And we'll begin. Table of contents, balance sheet is the first page. I'll go over our assets and liabilities. Part one, the next page, headquarter operations. Briefly discuss the actual revenues and expenses versus the prior year to date revenues and expenses. Headquarters operations part two, our current budget versus our actual revenues and expenses to date. And the last page, page four, I'll discuss the summary of the donor designated funds, okay, our national projects and so forth. Okay, brief note as a preface to the treasurer's report concerning oversight of our treasury. Our oversight is quite secure. We have 4 people who watch over our financial statements each month: myself, Michael McPherson, Shelley Rocket, and Angela Hudson of Davis and Associates. The end of the year financial statements are reviewed by Jeffrey Randall CPA with Randall and Associates, LLC, within the first quarter of the next fiscal year. Now I want to emphasize strongly that if you have any questions or concerns regarding any of the financials that I go over today, if you'd like a copy of this report and the most recent financials, please email me. My email address is here. It's also on the website. Again, do not hesitate. I'll respond with those financials to you and do my best to answer your questions and concerns. Okay, financial overview as of June 30th, 2017. Our current assets, you can see here, $485,188.52. Property and equipment, which is furniture, fixtures, depreciation, that comes to $1,786.46. Total other assets, which includes the Zinn endowment, the Zinn fund, $36,409. Total assets, $523,375.07, and that is about $19,000 less than last year. Okay. And I'll get more into specifics regarding our actual versus our budget and our actual versus prior year here in the next page. Liabilities and capital, current liabilities, which incorporate taxes, state, federal taxes, accounts payable, etc. That is $7,835.09, as you can see here. Total capital, which is comprised of temporary restricted and unrestricted funds, is $515,539.98, with total liabilities and capital equaling $523,375.07. And that would be our balance sheet. Yes, we have a question, Ben.
Sorry, mate. That second item there, the property, I think is missing a decimal. Is that 17?
It's $1,786.46.
Did you say 17?
I said $1,786.46, I believe. If I misspoke, I apologize.
So it is 1,000.
$1,786.46. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, headquarters operations part one, our actual expenses and revenues versus our prior year to date revenues and expenses. Membership dues, we are operating at $2,008.09 more than the prior year. due to an increase in all membership levels, with the exception of new associate memberships and lifetime memberships. Okay. In regard to donations, 135, 460, 53. That's $6,387.74 less than the prior year, due to a decrease in all donation types except for grants. Okay. Net other revenue, $3,111.69. That's $37,325.31 less than the prior year, and that is due largely to the store inventory. We are selling more in the store, therefore we need to keep a larger inventory. And the expense, I should say, of the 2017 convention concert. Okay, total revenue, $205,603.96, and that's about $41,704.96 less than the prior year. Again, largely due to store inventory expenses and the 2017 convention concert.
Are you taking any questions on now or no?
Please, yes.
The first one, which you just scrolled past, if you could scroll back,
Sure.
the dues
Mm-hmm.
seems very low. I mean, if you can't see, yeah.
Yep, I'll bring it
That's
back.
67,000. You divide that by 40. That's only 1,675 members. That seems really low.
This is current financials year to date, as
Oh,
of
year
June,
to date.
as of June 30th. Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Sorry.
as of June 30th.
Sorry.
Good eye, though.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you. One of my predecessors calling me to task here. Okay, total expenses, again, actual versus prior, 237,659.36. That is 34,710.68 more than the prior year. And this is due largely, not exclusively, but largely due to increases in advertising and marketing expenses, veteran travel expenses, the Golden Rule expense, and contractual services. Okay. Our income minus expenses line is at negative 32,055.40, and that is 76,415.64 less than prior year. Okay. And again, any concerns or questions you want to have me go more extensively into the reasons behind these figures, and also provide you hard copies of those financials, please email me. Okay, headquarters operations part 2, again as of June 30th. Budget, our current budget versus our actual revenues and expenses. Membership dues at $67,031.74. That's $2,964.26, $2,964.26 less than budgeted currently, and that's due almost entirely to lifetime memberships. Okay, less in lifetime memberships than had been budgeted to date. Donations, $135,460.53, and that is $97,743.47 less than budgeted. But that's because we had budgeted $100,000 in anticipation of receiving major donor contributions and fundraising efforts that were not realized, or have not yet been realized, I should say, to date. There's still time to go in the year. So this is the current place where we are at in donations. Okay, net other revenue expenses, $3,111.69, and that's $21,290.49 less than less than budgeted. And that's largely, again, due to store inventory expenses and convention concert expenses.
Yeah, I was wondering,
Okay.
there, counter,
And with my prior description concerning where we are at with total revenues, 205,603.96. Again, this is $122,000 less than budgeted, and that's primarily again due to that $100,000 in fundraising and major donors that have not yet been realized. However, were budgeted. Okay. Now the expense line for current actual revenues and expenses versus our budget. Total expenses $237,659.36, and that's $51,578.92 less than budgeted, largely due to staff reshuffling and the need to replace a full-time staff member. Okay. Income minus expenses, this gives us our bottom line, $32,055.40 in the red. That's where we currently are, and that's $70,421.30 less than budgeted. But again, back to the bottom line, $32,055.40 currently in the red.
Can I say something?
Absolutely, please.
So just a couple of things since we're talking about it. So one thing is, because we're not raising as much right now as we had anticipated, so then we of course adjust how much we spend. So that's why we're only $32,000 in the red as opposed to $132,000. So people should know that. So it does impact our ability to hire another person. But we do want to move ahead to do that, because not having another person also impacts how much we can do our work, which also impacts how much we can fundraise. So all these things kind of work together. The other thing is some of that $32,000 in the red, and Brian spoke to where some of that money is. So I just wanted to be a little more specific. Some of it is travel. For the delegations to go to Israel, Palestine, or wherever people went. Some of it is when he talked about marketing. Specifically, we gave $1,000, I think it was, to the drones, Nick Martin's drone campaign.
Very important.
Monturn.
My
Yes.
turn.
Okay. Monturn?
My turn.
Monturn, yes. And I'm trying to remember, there's one other thing that
We paid for an ad, I think we put $2,000 into an ad that we did
Right.
for
we put $2,000 into an advertisement, but I can't
the
remember.
TV thing that
Oh, right.
we had on.
For Memorial
Memorial
Day,
Day,
for
yeah.
Memorial Day, which is another thing that we also pay for people to travel. So my point being that the money is being spent on some program things to make us visible and to get veterans out, being able to have an impact in terms of the work we're doing. So it's not, we're not frivolously spending money, we're spending it on real things. But the biggest thing is we do have to increase how we raise the major donor money, because we just can't always go to our membership and think the $25, $30, $50 donations, although they definitely are very helpful. I mean, they're the backbone actually of our fundraising and our organization, because as you all know, there are a number of peace organizations that are no longer around, or peace organizations who have had to cut staff dramatically, and we have not had to do that. And when, as Barry said, when you cut staff, that means you're cutting back on work. So the smaller donations are the backbone of Veterans for Peace. We've not had to do that basically ever in the past 12 years. But if we want to expand our work and be more effective, we are going to have to find major donors. We can't really rely on grants. So one of the things I would ask you as members, if you know of people who have capacity to give, you know, $5, $10, $15, $20,000, you should let the board know. And if you want them to give to your chapter, you know, we can figure out a way for a portion of it to go to the chapter, a portion of it to come to national. We can work out something so that everyone can benefit. But if national benefits, then the whole organization really benefits because that makes our whole organization stronger. Just like all the national organizations that do good work, it helps at the local level. ACLU, for example, and others.
Thank you, Michael.
Question?
Yes.
On the donor budgeting, how does that happen? Do you just pick a number, or do you have anticipation of what you might be getting by, I don't know, talking to people, knowing people? How does that number come up with?
Right. Well, it is a little bit of picking a number.
Goals.
But yeah, it's goals, right? But it's also looking at what we think we want to do. Because budgets are really aspirational documents, because they change over time, because you look at what you actually bring in, and then you can, a good manager tries to make sure what you bring in, you don't have too much going out compared to what you bring in. So in part, the document is aspirational, looking at what we want to achieve, and then you look at the different revenue streams, membership, etc. And you don't want to increase things too much in one place or the other. But one place we did commit to increase quite a bit was major donors, because we felt that at the end of last year that we were going to be able to go out and do that. That has worked out so far. So yeah, it's kind of picking a number, but it's also having some kind of plan as to what you believe you're going to be able to do, and that honestly hasn't worked out yet. So.
And you might want to mention the legacy gift that you're
Yes,
pushing towards.
earlier when Barry, thank you. When Barry was talking about the bequest, one of the things that we're looking at is what we're doing now, and you'll see that when you see the letter of intent. It's called the Peace is Possible Legacy Gift. Because, and there's a whole explanation for it, but the idea is that you want to be, I know I do, want to be remembered as a person who, as Dr. King said, was a drum major for peace, right? So what we're asking people, if you leave a bequest, you'll become a Peace is Possible legacy giver. And it announces to the world that when you were here, because none of us are going to escape death, right? So that when you were here, that you were a drum major for peace, a person who believed in peace, and this gift is going to help others believe peace is possible. So that's a big part of what we hope in the future will help Veterans for Peace continue. So I ask all of you to think about giving us a request so that your name can be one of the Peace is Possible givers.
Thanks, Michael. Okay, the final page, special project summary of donor designated funds as of June 30th, 2017. I won't read through each of these numbers. You can see them here, and if you need to see them more closely, again, please email me for a copy. In terms of the lines, the projects that maybe jump out at you, the golden rule, okay? Maybe Michael and or Jerry would want to add insight as to the number here, 7,580.63 negative.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Michael.
Well, I can talk about a few of the things.
Yeah.
So,
there's a couple of things. One thing with the Golden Rule, there's about $60,000 in national budget to support the Golden Rule, which also, of that money, Samantha Ferguson, who we hired to be part-time halftime coordinator for the Golden Rule, and also halftime for the Veterans Challenge Islamophobia. So her salary is coming out of that money, and then other specific things are part of that $60,000 or so. But the bottom line too is that, and as well as Helen Jacquard, so the two staff people. But also, and the Golden Rule, which Barry didn't mention, the Golden Rule also has its own about $55,000 to $60,000 or so, $55,000 that it is responsible for raising in on its tour, because at each place that it goes, it attempts to raise money. So altogether, the Golden Rule's budget is over $100,000, with VFP National being responsible for a portion, and the local, or I shouldn't say local, the campaign itself being responsible for a portion. That line was from last year. Well, I should say this first. If the Golden Rule's not able to raise whatever that portion of their fundraising is, during the year, then Veterans for Peace National is going to make up that difference. So that's what happens. So like last year, at the end of the year, they needed money to do certain things, maintenance and things like that. So we sent them the money. And that's what
$6,000 that was.
$6,000. So part of that $7,580 is that $6,000 plus some other things that we sent the money for. Now what I've decided to do is, instead of keeping that line as a special project line, because most of those other lines, the project raises money themselves, and that money comes to the national office, and then we put it, we don't touch that. That's not money for the national office to spend for various things. That the money that they raise is for them to spend. That's why you see most of those items as being positive, like the Rock Water Project, for example, or Peace in Our Times, or whatever. But we at the national office haven't raised money just specifically for the Golden Rule. What we do is we take, when they need money, we take it out of our general funding. Because when we send out emails and e-blasts for funding, we talk about the Golden Rule, but we talk about other things too, right? So what I've decided is this year, and we haven't done it yet, but just take that line out, because we're not taking money and just putting it in there. It goes to the general funding, and then like I said, if they need it, we're gonna give it to them, right? Because we're responsible for it. So that's why that's showing up like that. And that number, if you were to look at the spreadsheet, it has each month what these numbers are. In January, that number was 7,580. So that's just being carried, from month to month. That's what that is. That wouldn't have changed since January. Okay. And then another question that Barry brought up was the Islamophobia campaign. What is the budget for that? The grant that we got last year, that $36,980, was about what was left over from that grant. So that is the money that we've committed specifically to Veterans Challenge Islamophobia campaign until we able to raise some more money specifically for that campaign. Do you want to ask me a question about that?
It's just a little thing, but it's listed as the Islamophobia campaign, and as if we want to encourage Islamophobia.
Should be anti-Islamophobia campaign.
In our paperwork, it says Islamophobia instead of anti-Islamophobia.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, thank you.
Well, the actual name is Veterans Challenge Islamophobia.
Right.
I know that,
She knows.
you can't spell that out, but if you just
Yeah, we could.
Anti doesn't take up that much room.
It's
Yeah.
taken
Anti.
directly from the financials. This is how it's listed on the financials, but I'll
Yeah,
make sure to
we'll
correct
fix
that
that.
on the report. Yeah. Yes, Nate.
I've got a general question.
Sure.
When I was treasurer, we were really terrible about the board doing fundraising. Most nonprofits, a board of directors, one of their primary functions is to do fundraising for the organization. So my question is, are you any better than when I was on the board?
Yes.
Barry, did you want to take that? Comparison to previous boards, who can speak?
I would say,
Well,
Yeah.
what do you, okay, if you don't know what the other board is, what's the current situation about the board?
Well, I'd like to think individually, yeah, go ahead, Mike, go ahead.
well, the board might not like my answer.
We have Nick's good.
Yeah,
They're not gonna find you, don't worry.
Not right
You
now.
never know, right, not right now. And that might be a blessing, actually. So, Tariq, just pointed out, and this is true, that the Jackson Brown concert that we're having, and we'll have to see how much it raises. But if it raises quite a bit of money, it probably would be the most money that, maybe the most money the board has been directly responsible for. So we'll see how that goes, you know. But I would say generally, we haven't cracked the code on board raising money. So, you know, I'm not saying that negatively, I'm just saying that as what it is, you know. And we need to figure out ways to do that. And I know that generally speaking, we don't like to ask people for money. And the left, I think, sees money as being evil and all that. And I kind of do too, but at the end of the day, it's really what you do with the money, because we all need money. I mean, all of you all work, and most of you probably own homes, and you actually probably have more assets and value than most people in the United States if you're here at this hotel right now. So that's the reality, and none of y'all are evil people. So I think a little bit we have to get past the idea of being afraid to ask people for money and understand it's about what we do with the money, and I know we're doing good stuff with the money. So we haven't cracked the code, but we're working on it.
Yeah, I just want to add quickly, and I know maybe this doesn't directly respond to Nate's question as a collective body fundraising efforts, but I want to speak to our individual efforts as board members. I know all of us work diligently to bring aboard new members through Peace in Our Times, through outreach and so forth. Wherever we go, I think regardless of if it's a personal activity, if it's a professional activity in a VFP capacity, we're always in a VFP capacity, I think. So we're always looking to bring aboard new members and to get our name out and our mission out. Many of us carry Peace in Our Times with us and give out copies when we can, again, to notify and to inform folks about our work. So at that level, at the micro level, I think it's very active. So I just wanted to mention that. Yes.
I just want to mention one other thing that we've started to do, and I think it's important. It's not an ask for money, but what we do is that, and if you got a phone call from us, it's because you're on a list of donors. So what we want to do is to, and we've done it at our board meetings, we get a list of the top 50 or 60 donors, and we divide it up among our members, and we call everybody, not to ask you for money, but to thank you for your contributions. So how many here have gotten a phone call that from somebody, it's either because you didn't pick the phone up or you're not at the top of the list. No, so that's one of the things that we try to do, and that's an individual responsibility. What we have found is it connects us with some board members who will tell us things about VFP, who will mention that Peace in Our Times is a lifeline to me, I think is one of the things. I had a long conversation with an older vet in Arkansas who is doing work. He can't come to the convention, but he tells me about his outreach program and how important Veterans for Peace is to him, and he makes contributions to it. So when we try to connect with people individually, that's one of the outreaches that we started to do to make sure that we express on behalf of us, the board, our appreciation for whatever you're doing in the contributions that you make. And so I think that's another aspect of fundraising that hasn't been part of what the previous boards have done. It's not fundraising, but it plants the seeds for future stuff.
Thank you, Barry. We had a question from Monisha Rios.
Actually, it was a response. Thanks for raising that, Nate, because I think it's an important thing to focus on for a minute. In other boards that I've served on, it has been a major responsibility, and one that I take seriously. As far as me personally, what I prefer to do is to really get to know people as I'm doing this piecework representing VFP. And in that doing of the work, build relationships with people to the work. And a result of that has been that a colleague of mine donated $2,000 in my honor to VFP recently. I had no idea that that was going to happen. But it has definitely motivated me to look at different ways that perhaps we could, with everything else that we're trying to accomplish, maybe revamp some of our strategies in that regard. So thank you again for bringing that up.
Thanks, Monisha. Yes, we have a question here.
Yes, from the Smedleys, and you're very important about the Howard Zinn Fund. I'm not quite clear, but exactly, is that what is in the fund at this time?
Yes, that's what we have in the endowment fund. That's the amount, yes.
Is there any numbers of what was collected in the last year or two or what have you for the fund?
We have those broken out, yes, in our special projects financials that I can send you.
Okay.
Okay, if you email me or speak with me after the business meeting during lunch, I can go ahead and get your email address as well and send that to you.
It's very important to the Smedleys.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. And
I'm sorry, what was the
question in regard to the amount for the Zinn Fund, what that amount represents.
How much has been raised?
How much has been raised?
Yeah, that's the money that's in the fund itself.
In the endowment.
Right, and last year, the board allocated, that's how much money is in the fund. Last year, not the portion that goes out to, but this is in the whole fund. And last year, the board allocated $5,000 or a certain amount of money to try to keep it up. And we want to do that again, but of course that goes back to fundraising for it, in general. But one thing we need to figure out is how to raise specifically for the Howard Zinn Fund. So that's something that I know some board members are looking at. And using the Howard Zinn Fund really to raise money for Veterans for Peace. And one of the things we were looking at.
Michael.
That's not me.
I know it. Sounds good.
Gosh, I'm trying to remember. So I'll be rolling this out in the next few months, hopefully. But we wanted to use Howard Zinn's name to have like a Howard Zinn, and I can't remember the name of what I was thinking, but it's a Howard Zinn. Well, yeah, it would be a community of sorts of givers, the major donors. Howard Zinn, I don't want to call it society because that doesn't sound right, but Howard Zinn Peace Builders or something like that. So when we get a major gift and you become part of that Howard Zinn Peace Builders, a portion of the money would go into the Howard Zinn Foundation, our Howard Zinn Fund, and the other portion would go into the Veterans for Peace general funding to fund other projects and our work. So that's what we're looking at, but we got to do specific fundraising, major donor and or Howard Zinn fundraising, like a Howard Zinn event. I hope you heard everything I said. You're looking at me like that.
Yeah. Just one last question. How much the fund was established to help chapters in their projects when they have their.
That's what it does.
Yeah. Was there any chapters put out to help people? How many projects have we helped?
I can't give you that answer. Ken Barger and I can't remember
who else is on the Zinn?
Well, I'm the liaison to the board. It started in 2012.
Microphone. Yes.
I was a teacher. I usually don't need these things. 2012 it started, and it took, and it's still taking time to design how to attract chapter members to write grants, and it's been quite a challenge because very few people really understand what's needed in writing a grant. You have to be able to show what results you're going to get after you do whatever it is you want to do, and most of the time there aren't any results. So we're trying to help train our chapter members in how to write a grant and what's all involved in it. Yeah.
Can I speak to that grant writing? George Taylor, Spokane, Chapter 35. We applied for a grant to a foundation called the Resist Foundation. And we received a check for $5,000, one time only, from that Resist Foundation. We didn't know anybody in the foundation. It was a cold application. We didn't know somebody in the board who would put our application on the top. We just sent it in.
Yeah.
And we received a $5,000 grant.
Congratulations.
That's the way this is.
It's right there.
Yeah.
It's a very unique foundation.
Okay,
I can tell you that one of the biggest successes of the Zen committee was is there anybody here from the Long Beach chapter? I don't know, 67. They got a grant and they developed a peace studies program or peace program in one of the high schools in Long Beach. It was so successful, it spread to 5 additional high schools in the Los Angeles area. And if you want to look at the report, it was a very detailed report in response as required by the Zen committee, laying out what their goals were, what they did, and what was achieved by it. So there are examples of really successful programs. And when I read it, I thought this would be a great example of a national program that maybe we ought to think about pushing on in schools, because starting at that level, if you can influence kids in high school to be peacemakers, that may be where we really need to be pushing our efforts. So it's something to think about. But that was quite successful. We got to move on, folks, because it's 10 after 11,